Great. Well, it's good to be back. It's good to be here and see folks from the chamber again, and have the opportunity to share some of what's going on in OSPCD. We are a solid and significant 22 days into a new mayor's administration, which means I am now able to tell you everything that's on her mind and everything that we will be doing with. I won't be able to, actually. I'm kidding there. We're working great together, but it is early in the administration, so we're still formulating a lot of policy conversations. So I may not have all the answers, but I would like to share some things today in terms of what is on the mayor's mind and what is on our mind in OSPCD as we head into a new year. 2022 is here, and the new normal has arrived. I've never really liked that term because I never really understood completely what it means, but I think we're heading to a circumstance where my hope is that we're not looking at additional COVID wave reactions, but more kind of establishing a strategy to live with and understand the challenges of this virus as it goes through additional phases, variants, whatever. I didn't put all the COVID numbers on the slides today like I have done in the past. But I will say that from this morning's COVID update to the mayor, what we're seeing is a drop, pretty significant drop in cases over the last week or so from the peaks that we had 2 weeks ago. So while things have been frustrating in the world of the Omicron variant, trends are heading back down from this peak, and we hope that that'll allow us a little bit more flexibility on where we go next. I want to give an update on just 5 categories: OSPCD Overview, business assistance, Mayor Valentine's 100-day plan, advancing reinvestment in our community, the ARC program that former Mayor Curtatone had introduced, and a bit of an update on commercial development. I want to start with OSPCD Overview. I haven't done this the last time I presented before you, but I'm realizing that sometimes I just need to step back and share all of what we've been doing. I've spent most of my time in the previous conversations with you talking about business assistance, workforce development, and real estate development. But OSPCD is a pretty broad-based organization, and we are pretty unique in local government in the areas that we cover and how it's brought together under one umbrella. As it says here, we're committed to making Somerville a more exceptional place to live, work, play, and raise a family by implementing the goals, policies, and actions of the Somerville Vision Comprehensive Plan. Now that we have the 2040 version, we have a new update of that plan that was adopted a couple of months ago. And then you have the list of the things we do: enhancing low and moderate income areas. We do that. We put that first because we receive federal grants to do that. Stimulate economic development, increase job opportunities, create future development opportunities, improve the city's neighborhoods. Talks about housing options, Somerville's open space and urban forest, transportation with a focus on long-term economic, environmental, and social quality of life. So we do all of that by having an organization that has 7 divisions, total of 68 positions in city government across those 7 divisions that I work to manage. And each of them has their own focus: administration and community development. They're the group that works with federal block grants, that runs the Community Preservation Act team. Economic development, that's Tom Galligani's team. They're focused on 3 main areas: business development, workforce development, and real estate development, a lot of which we end up talking about here in these presentations. The housing division, that does everything from lead paint programs to inclusionary housing. Our relatively new housing stability team that started just before the COVID pandemic and has been really helpful in the pandemic in addressing rental assistance and displacement issues in Somerville. The team we call Planning, Preservation, and Zoning, that oversees the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Planning Board, the Historic Preservation Commission, and manages a lot of the physical design growth and private development work in the city. Mobility and public space and urban forestry. Those last 2 were split in 2020, 2019 actually, from our earlier transportation infrastructure team. The mobility team dealing with bike lanes, sidewalks, street improvements, our strategy to become the most walkable, bikeable, transit-centered community in America, and public space and urban forestry, just both based, as it says, on public space and on urban forestry. One is designing our parks and playgrounds. The other is making sure we have street tree canopy and good street trees, and address all issues of the urban forest as a part of our community. So that all keeps us pretty busy. We cover a lot. We're doing a lot. We got a lot going on in OSPCD these days. But I want to focus a little bit more on kind of how and where and the circumstances under which we've been interacting with the business community. Some of this we've talked about before, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into where we're going on this front. I've been saying for over a year now that we have had or a year and a half or so, we've had a really specific strategy surrounding COVID with three prongs to it. It hasn't changed. We're still focused on this three-pronged strategy as it relates to COVID. One is to maintain new growth. That helps us stay out of recessionary periods or remain in good circumstances under recessionary periods. And after watching the last few days of stock market, I'm really not sure exactly what sort of a period we're in, but there certainly is a lot of challenges going on in the national economy right now, from interest rates to supply chain. Our focus in a lot of this is to make sure that we don't lose the focus on the new commercial growth that has been important to the city, because it allows us to cover and address a lot of other things we're doing. Talk more about that when we talk about the ARC program. Build a bridge to a post-COVID Somerville, doing everything we can to keep our small businesses strong and stop displacement and evictions. An innovation for a better future, which is what we always do. And we can talk more about how we've been doing that as we go. If you've been working or discussing anything recently with our economic development division, by the way, I just noticed I have the former mayor's name on every one of these slides, so I'm going to correct that before I do another presentation. So I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I just noticed that. It's been so old hat that's just down there, but I will fix that in the very near future. I
read it.
We won't tell
It
anybody.
didn't register.
Yeah, don't right. Just let's just keep that between the 22 of us, but nonetheless, it's his name is also on a whole bunch of signs in the city. We're working on that. So there's a lot of work to do on that front. But anyway, I digress a little bit right there as I'm staring at my slide. Many of you may have spoken to our economic development team about our small business programs, and I just want to focus a little bit on this for a moment. We are still focused on providing direct support for businesses that need relief based upon some of the things that have been going on with this virus, with the reaction to the virus, the impact of the virus. There have been 3 rounds of COVID small business relief completed with $4.5 million awarded. There is at this point another $2.5 million available. We're putting together a spring round 4, and round 4, Tom's collecting feedback. We're putting together ideas about how to make sure that round 4 reaches the businesses that need it most and are most impacted by the virus as we are in this phase, and that are able to remain stable moving forward. We're also focused on workforce development targets post-COVID, on making sure that we're preparing our community and our community members to be a part of the childcare industry, life sciences, climate tech, and really any other industry that is effectively a part of where where things are going today, and where our community has the opportunity for new job opportunities for people who live in Somerville.
Oh, yeah.
I am getting a little bit of background noise, and well, I'm going to hit this mute all button just to be safer. And I hope that helps. Not that I'm trying to close anyone up, but we can talk more when we get to that point. A big part of what we're talking about is right now deals with outdoor dining. In the last 2 years, we did some temporary work around parklets and sidewalk seating. And there are new outdoor dining guidelines that are available in a draft form. So if you are interested in that, if that is an area of focus for you, I want to point out that there's a couple things going on regarding outdoor dining. Most significantly, the new outdoor dining rule process is going to be implemented by the Licensing Commission. I think they're probably going to vote on it at their February meeting. And one of the things that I think is important is that people in the business community who deal with how our outdoor dining spaces are used take a really close look at this. It is one of the things we're trying to address once and for all is make sure that outdoor dining remains accessible and meets ADA and mass access board standards. One of the other challenges is making sure that that things are a little bit more stable and safe. Some of the ideas we've done in the short term were really designed to be done quickly, but as we bring people onto outdoor dining over the long run, we want to make sure that it's something that's durable and works, which basically also, just to be straightforward, will necessitate more significant investments by businesses in a lot of cases to be able to continue to do, particularly some of the parklet seating out on the street side. And we are also implementing a grant program at the same time as a part of the phase 4 grants to help businesses pay for some of those things. We're looking at ways that we can be an effective partner, whether that be providing funding, sourcing materials, assisting with getting things done. But we understand that that's adding a cost. We want to keep outdoor dining going. We want to make sure it's possible. So we want to have that grant program to make it part of what we do. Most specifically, when we look at outdoor dining, we've seen a lot of sidewalk seating, and we've seen a lot of the parklets, which are the ones out on the streets. A lot of times the parklets had a lot of challenges with the curb ramps and getting them down to street level. We're trying to have the parklets be built up to sidewalk level this year, which would address a lot of that. We're trying to make sure that the sidewalk seating has accessible clear areas, and we're trying to make sure that they can be more durable over the long run. And the way I would define durable, a lot of these pictures are from the earliest days of COVID. You know, the Independent had something that they had long ago built, which is a very durable parklet type seating area. Some of our other restaurants, I love the creativity of what we did to do outdoor seating. But as we're into year 3, we're trying to do something a little bit more permanent than that. So as we look at these different strategies from the past, we're going to be taking a look at how to make sure that we can make it possible. The seating was a very successful and something that people were very thrilled with. We want to keep it going, but we want to keep it going in a way that makes sense. So yeah, we want to be creative in a way that is completely accessible. And that's why the new rules are more significant. They are more costly, but we're also going to help. We're going to make sure that this works. The one thing that I do think is a good piece of news as it relates to this is the Licensing Commission has gotten really good at addressing how to regulate, manage, and address issues of outdoor seating. In 2019, to do outdoor seating, you basically needed 4 board approvals for your review. In the 2020 modified process, the state removed the process of going to the state ABCC, the Alcoholic Beverages Commission, if you did outdoor alcoholic beverages, and the other 2 steps, the city council step and the planning board step, were removed by the city. Both the planning board and the city council decided that the licensing commission process is working well and permanently removed those steps. We're still looking to see some of the things going on at the state level about ABCC rules, but for now, our focus is on a streamlined, simplified process, but one with a very specific design review to make sure that they're safe and accessible when they open. One of the, I'll share one of the challenges that we face, just to be honest, because this is one of the things that really bothers me in the world of the outdoor seating. Up until 2020, it was not legal in Massachusetts to carry an alcoholic beverage across an open sidewalk to deliver to an outdoor seating area. So if you had a restaurant and you had the seating on the street side, and you ordered a beer, and the waiter had to carry the beer from the restaurant to the street side seating, that was permitted in during COVID. There were some questionable back and forth with the ABCC, but probably technically not allowed before. And there's a lot of folks looking at making sure to make it clear that that is something that you can do. I certainly want to be very sensitive about our efforts to make sure that we don't provide easy access to alcohol to people who shouldn't have access to it. But at the same time, I'm not particularly sure that a waiter carrying a beer across the sidewalk is the greatest threat to our community. So in reality, if we can find a way to work to make that still possible and under the new rules, this sits with state rules, that hopefully that can be a part of all of that. The other thing I just wanted to mention briefly is we have something called the COVID Ambassadors Program. We don't talk much about it. We haven't had a lot of conversation about this with the chamber, and I just wanted to make you aware that We still have folks out on the street in Somerville sharing information about COVID. They're contractors to us who we've had them around for about a year. They're in neighborhoods, in open spaces, on main streets, and when we need to get information out about COVID, encourage people to wear masks, provide feedback for making sure that our public knows kind of what's going on and stay safe and healthy in the community. They're out there, and you may see them around the community, whether it's handing out paperwork or talking to local businesses about what we need to happen to make COVID work, to address COVID issues. So those folks are still out there for at least another few months, and we'll see how that evolves as time goes on. I want to talk a little bit about the mayor's 100-day plan. I want to pivot to that now. If you haven't yet seen this document, the 100-day progress agenda, is online on the city website. It focuses on 7 key areas, which are listed here: COVID response and recovery, equity, inclusion, and social justice, affordability for all, environmental sustainability and climate change, access, transparency and accountability, quality of life, and strengthening and supporting the city's workforce. I want to focus on just a few of the items under these sub-bullets that might be of interest from a Chamber of Commerce economic development perspective, because I think some of them are really important to what we're discussing today. Spurring collaboration to expand equitable access to good jobs and working conditions. So there's conversations about more partnerships between the school department, the labor unions, community-based organizations to increase diversity amongst trade union membership and to help grow equitable access to better benefits, wages, and job protection for Somerville workers. I want to think very carefully about this, because I think this is a real opportunity here to make sure that the workforce that is building a lot of the new Somerville that we're seeing around us has opportunity to be a diverse workforce, to include individuals from our community. I know there are a number of folks in the chamber who have worked hard to ensure that young people, often people of color coming out of the Somerville public school system, have opportunity in the trades and opportunity to be on a career ladder that will work for them for better, as it says, better benefits, wages, and job protections. I think in the coming weeks and months, we'll have a lot more conversations about how to address this issue, and maybe somewhere our Jobs Trust and our Workforce Development Program can provide assistance to making sure to stay focused on this goal, and that's going to be a part of the conversation the first 100 days. I think one of the other ones that's interesting is closing the wealth gap for women, and specifically women of color. The mayor's committed to directing $2 million of the ARPA funds, that's the coronavirus relief program, that the latest version of that, to an initiative to strengthen resources that work to close the equity gap for women in Somerville. So again, a lot of this falls in the job creation and job training world. So I think there's some opportunities there as well. Set a path for creating quality privately owned public space in Somerville. This falls right in our public space and urban forestry team, working on ensuring that our development projects create public spaces that residents that meet the highest quality standards for maintenance. I think that if you look at the evolution of the public space design that we have created in working with developers, so privately owned public spaces, when a developer builds a public space, but it's open to the public all the time. We have them in a number of different places. The open space behind the Mass General Brigham building in Assembly Row, the open space at Maxwell's Green. And I think that I want to give support for the ones that we have created in the past, but I think at the same time, the ones that are under construction now are just that much better. The space in Boynton Yards, the spaces around Union Square are really significant and important parts of our future in providing open space. These are being built by private developers. They're not being built by the city. Certainly, we can do a great job with the Healy Schoolyard or a Conway Park, but the way we're growing open space in this city is by having open space requirements as part of new development, and then working to make sure they are better and better. I think we are finally reached the point where we're going to have some written standards. We take a lot of these case by case, and some of the standards in the zoning have helped, but real written standards to elevate making sure that each of our open spaces meet the highest standards for quality. We made a lot of progress. I think we're going to make a lot more. This is part of the 100-day focus. Move forward actions to create safer streets for Somerville. Launch an assessment of needs investments to strengthen protected bike lanes, increase traffic control measures, address pedestrian safety, and expand staff capacity to work strategically across city departments, and working with the mobility, engineering, parking, and public safety team to make tangible progress on improving safety on our streets and pathways for all residents. I think it's fair to say that Mayor Ballantyne is very focused on increasing and improving upon the efforts we've made to make Somerville the most walkable and bikeable community in the country. And a lot of focus on that will be coming from the effort here to make safer streets for Somerville, and continue to work on some of the things our mobility department has been working on that front. The last thing, in addition to that, this is not in the 100-day plan, because I think it's more than a 100-day plan. I think that this is beyond 100 days. There's a continued work on the Advancing Reinvestment in Our Community program, which is called ARC. ARC was introduced by former Mayor Curtatone in March. It may have been lost on some people because the announcement came in the same announcement when he said he wasn't running for re-election. And I think maybe in that moment, people were very focused on the not running for re-election thing, and maybe not as focused on the other policy discussions we were having. But we've had conversations with him, and we've had conversations with the current mayor on this effort around community wealth building. The basics of this are really simple, and I describe it this way. I think a lot of folks who are focused on equity in our community and are focused on a lot of the things in our summer vision goals also look at our commercial development and ask a very fair and reasonable question about how does that commercial development directly benefit achieving these city goals. And we talked a lot about why we want commercial development: to build up tax base, to stabilize the community's tax base. We have a lot of infrastructure needs, and certainly a portion of our new tax base is covering infrastructure needs. I do think that we often need to remember that the last decade of growth, which has been pretty significant, has helped us fund things like the Office of Housing Stability, and the growing programs in workforce development have helped us be able to build a jobs linkage program and things like that. But I think the next step, the next evolution in this conversation is there a world in which we can target a portion of the new growth coming from all of these new buildings that are being built in the city, and target them in such a way that we make sure they directly benefit people who need them most. And we're working with this organization that has offered to do pro bono consulting with us, called the Democracy Collaborative. We're also working with local resident Ann Tate on this concept of community wealth building, which is a way of thinking about economic development, poverty alleviation, and wealth creation. Not to tinker around the edges, as the president of the Democracy Collaborative says, but to boldly take on fundamental changes in how and for whom the local economy operates. So here we go. We've got new and amazing opportunities. Last year, our tax base grew by $10 million because of new development. This year, we've already brought in over $10 million in building permit fees. A lot of this does have to go to cover infrastructure, so I want to be very fair about that and say, we need to fix our 100-year-old sewer pipes. That's important. But the interesting question to ask is there a way to make sure that the flow of new public benefits from the growth of our local economy is a rising tide that lifts all boats? Is there a program to help train Somerville single mothers to run in-home daycares? Is there a program to ensure that our arts community has locations where artists can thrive in the future? Those are just two examples. There are probably 50 more, and the Democracy Collaborative is going to be working on producing a report for Mayor Ballantyne on some of these strategies. But to me, it's really important because I didn't get into the business. It was great to get into the business of building new neighborhoods and new areas of the city for the benefits that they provide to the city. But one of the reasons why we did that, a significant reason why we did that, is so that would benefit the community as a whole. we're very focused in Housing Stability Office of making sure that we don't displace people. So anti-displacement is part of the focus. But anti-displacement, as much as I love what Housing Stability does, it is reactionary to a problem when the most fundamental challenge is how do we keep community members from getting into a situation where they're at risk of displacement to begin with. And if there's job training, if there's programs, if there's opportunities to do that, and if we can use some of that new growth to fund that, I think that will bring the community together to see the value of all of the new tax revenue that's coming in through these new buildings, and place them in a way that will be helpful for the community. So we're really focused on that. We're focused on the 100-day program. We're focused on the ARC, and it is in that context that I do the last section of this presentation again, which I've done this each of the last 2 times I've been in front of you. And I want to take a moment to again just review the commercial development that is underway in Somerville, in the different neighborhoods, and where things are going, and what may be coming up next. So the first, I think, major thing to talk about is the Green Line itself. I don't have an exact opening date for Union Square Station, but it is going to be this spring, and I don't have exact opening dates for the rest of the stations, but they're supposed to follow a couple of months behind. And for those who've been out there seeing test trains run on the line, and construction continuing underway, it really is coming together to look like something real, and it's very exciting. If you haven't been down in the main part of the Green Line system, where you actually see that they've put the maps up showing all our stations on the maps, on the Green Line. So if you're standing at Park Street now, it actually shows the E and the D line going into Somerville on some of the maps. It's pretty exciting to go, oh, look, that's real. Lagoon Square Station, Ball Square Station, these are real things. They're actually on the verge of happening, and it's very exciting. For those who haven't heard me speak on this 1,000 times before, with the opening of the Green Line, 85% of Somerville will be within a half-mile walk of a transit station. Prior to the Green Line and Assembly Square, that number was 15%. So it really is transformative in terms of transit access for our community. I think the other thing that has been transformative for our community is the high school. Tom Galligani likes to remind me and others, our economic development director, when he presents, that this right here is the greatest economic development, the greatest economic development accomplishment in the last decade, and not to downplay any of the amazing work the world has done in private development, but preparing our amazingly diverse student community for jobs and life in the future is just a huge opportunity. And having a state-of-the-art building with amazing academic programs, a great vocational program, and having it basically done. There's some punch list items going up on the hill behind me here. These 2 windows behind me face out to the front of City Hall, to the parking area, and I can usually hear them digging up to build that field behind me over here. But we've made a lot of progress, and having an open high school complete that can serve our student community is really exciting, and really has been a big part of our city's goals. And as I said before, we see our future in a number of different industries. Obviously, there's a world of construction and development that will be going on for a while. There's a big focus on life science right now. It seems to be everybody wants to build a life science building, but we're also focused on climate tech. We really believe that and I say this not just because our outgoing mayor was heading into this field, but also because as we look at Greentown Labs and the companies coming out of Greentown Labs, that we think there's a long-term future for companies trying to address the impacts of climate change through technology, to have an opportunity to grow and thrive in Somerville, as long as we're providing the spaces that are available for both of them. So as we look through the neighborhoods, Union Square, the Union Square projects are moving along well. I think it's tough to miss. It'd be tough not to miss the tower going up here in the right by the T station. So housing and a life sciences building over here on the D2 development site. The rest of these colored buildings you can see here are the remainder of the proposal that US2 has. US2 is also permitting their D3, the beginning of their D3 block, which is the Beacon Sales site, which is over here, which is another life science building, which will really serve as the entrance into Boynton Yards. I won't call it Gateway because I have a Boynton Yards Gateway building proposed just behind it over there by a different developer. So there's a lot going on over there. Cambridge Crossing, really interesting project at Cambridge Crossing because everybody looks at it kind of as a Cambridge project. But for those who don't know, this little zigzag line right here is the Cambridge Somerville city line. And then at some point in time, Boston kind of cuts in over here as well. Building J and K is Philips North American headquarters. About 30% of that's in Somerville. Building E and F is, as it was explained to me recently, I think it's really interesting. Bristol Myers Squibb has put a cancer study center together and is combining people in multiple buildings into building E and F as it's opening. This is an entire structure of scientists focused to answer one single question, which is why does cancer come back? And what can we do to address it? And that building sits 100% in Somerville. They have a Cambridge Street address, a Cambridge Crossing development area, but they're on our side of the line. The Bristol Myers Squibb Cancer Center is our team. They're in Somerville, so it's good to have them in the community. And those are the two buildings. The Phillips one underway, the Bristol Myers Squibb, or Phillips is in, the Bristol Myers Squibb one is close. And then Boynton Yards. Boynton Yards, some significant opportunity here. 101 South Street has occupancy now. Some of the folks under that have moved in there as lab, it calls it speculative lab. It was a real bold move that the DLJ team and Leggett came out and said, okay, we're going to build a lab building here, and then got the arrangement with Flagship and the companies with them to come in, and it's worked out really well, which has led to them seeking to build and to start construction on the second building, which is the second parcel over here, and the open space that's in between. My drawings are a little out of date, I think, on Boynton Yards, because Boynton Yards has recently as last Thursday, been in front of the planning board to update their master plan. They've purchased the building that Taza Chocolate is in. Don't worry, I don't expect the chocolate company to be going anywhere, but this is going to be kind of a center of creative activity for them. And then it allows this site over here to have a building as well, in addition to across the Gentle Giant site. So a lot of big plans coming for Boynton Yards. One of the big things we've done working with this is worked on how to improve the street network. One of the big asks we have coming forward as a community that we have to go through the steps for financial borrowing is that Boynton Yards, a significant portion of the infrastructure costs here are covered by the developers. There are basically three things that are not covered by the developers in this district. And those three things are the storage of the underground water storage that goes under here in order to be able to make stormwater work, as long as some of the pipes to get to it. This park right here, which is owned privately by somebody who's sort of separate from all the other development teams, and the cost of punching South Street through this last block over here. So I expect we'll be coming in for another district improvement financing request to the city council for the Boynton Yards DIF, which will be to cover the costs of the pieces that the private development world isn't picking up. But again, like the large center open space, this piece is being developed by DLJ and Leggett. A lot of the street improvements are being done by the developers as they work. So this is the Boynton Gateway building site. So a lot of the improvements around these sites are being done by the developers as they come in, and each one of those has its own development covenant that basically establishes infrastructure, community benefits, and then also we get housing and jobs linkage off each of those. So we kind of put each of those together. Brick Bottom, we're doing neighborhood planning. If you go down to Brick Bottom, you'll see that North River's first project site is underway. And that is a little turned around here. It's over here next to Brick Bottom, next to the arts building there. So this block is going to be a tech building, which kind of works with the ones across the way. We're spending a lot of time talking to North River about how to bridge these tracks and connect to the community path in this area. We have some good ideas. We've got to work with the MBTA on getting that all done. The neighborhood plan draft is out. I will say, if you've read the draft, it is very, it's very much visual. There's a lot of words to build around it and a lot of description to build around it still, and a lot to do on that, but it's out there in draft form, so be sure to check that out. And then assembly, Puma has moved into their building. I need to get an actual photo of this, because with the artwork with the heads on it, it actually looks 1,000 times cooler than the rendering at this point. But Puma's arrived. Biomed Realty has pulled their building permit to start on their parking garage in their first building over here, so that's exciting. Having I believe is the largest biotech developer out there in the community working on this site. The 74 Middlesex project site has also been converted to a tech lab building, and that is underway. But the biggest thing I want to talk about with assembly is the neighborhood plan itself. A lot of people have focused on the neighborhood work that's been done by Federal Realty. And a lot of my focus and interest is making sure that we're focused on a plan and that we understand where we're going in the long run. The operable plan in assembly. Now, mind you, up until recently, typically our zoning, actually, I think our current zoning references that buildings should be consistent with the community plan. The current community plan for assembly is the one that shows IKEA on the waterfront. So those who remember the history of the world around assembly, IKEA was moved off the waterfront when they did the land swap with Federal Realty about 2004, 2005 timeframe. And then the 2006 master plan approval included IKEA down where Mass General Brigham ended up, which was also in the 2010 revision, which is the one I wrote, which is what they're still working off to develop. That was modified to let the Mass General Brigham building in after IKEA left. But still, kind of the whole future of what happens in the rest of this district was not well defined, because we were working on this earlier plan. This rendering, I will say, one of the pieces of feedback we got from the community is that this rendering isn't exactly what we want to see. There's some of the open spaces aren't shown very clearly. A lot of these buildings are shown with interior above ground parking, which wasn't really our long-term intent. And this row of buildings right here is actually not as tall as it is in the plan proposal. So I love the rendering because it's pretty, but it isn't exactly everything that's probably going to come out of the last plan draft. We had the plan open for comments through last Friday. We received some comments. We're checking back in with our staff to kind of figure out where to go from there. I do hope we'll be presenting some version of this plan to the planning board soon, which would allow us to be able to do some zoning tweaks over here to make sure some of this happens. But meanwhile, while that's going on, Biomed's building the building here. The building at 74 Middlesex is underway here. The Brickyard building is, I want to say it's this one, but a number of projects are going on. We're not slowing down, but at the same time, we want to make sure we get everything in line with the plan as we move forward. So that's kind of my overview of where we are at this point in time. Obviously, things evolve, things are changing. And as I said at the beginning of my presentation, we're on day 22 of the new mayor's administration, and I will make sure that every slide I create from this point forward has her name on it. We're working closely to implement that 100-day agenda, as well as focus on continuing the efforts to move forward with the development opportunities in the city. And OSPCD just continues to chug along. We really didn't slow down even for inaugural day. We've been just plowing on through and continuing to do what we do to try to make Somerville the best it can be. So, Stephen, that's basically what I have to share today. If you want to have any questions, facilitate conversation, that's where we are.
You and I can facilitate conversation, but before that, I just want to say it was another outstanding presentation. And also when it comes to being sure whose name is on it, I was thinking through all of those visuals, your central role in bringing the community together and all of us together to get where we are today and to be poised to address the questions and the opportunities that you laid out. So we want to be sure to make sure Ballantyne and Proakis are in there.
Well,
Along those lines, you brought up, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with the mayor. We're working on an education collaborative. As you outlined in her address, the workforce diversity and equity, the equity for women, the privately owned public spaces agenda, the safer streets, and the democratic collaborative. When it comes to all of that, I kind of, when we talk about the jobs trust in particular as the latest thing, there's millions of dollars that all the money in that is millions of dollars from development. The way I see it, watching your presentation, is when I see that new building, whether it's in Assembly Row or Boynton Yards or Union Square, I kind of see the dollar signs and the names of the people that did that building, the companies that did that building, attached to the Jobs Trust. Now, in Habit, that doesn't happen. The Jobs Trust is public money, and it's basically been forgotten where it came from. That happens to a lot of housing money. We might look at that so that people understand, if they can see the names like they would on public television, brought to you by, and it can say brought to you by this developer or that developer, and by people like you that live in Somerville. So we might consider something like that to help kind of bring us together. The other thing is we were very much behind the new high school. Part of doing all the work that we were doing together, the whole community for 20 years, was to be able to meet citizen expectations about public works, public safety, and public education. And a new high school was always part of the agenda. And the chamber endorsed the financing and the ways to get to a new high school such as we have. So we're very proud of that, very happy to see it. And it was long overdue for the people of Somerville. But with that, I'll stop. I want to make sure that we give some time to Q&A.
all right, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, although I hit mute all at some point, I do believe that we are in a good place to have people unmute and ask questions, and I guess hand raised too. It looks like Jack Connolly, you have your hand raised, so it seems you're first. If you want to just dive in and ask a question, go right ahead.
Thank you, George, and it's really good to hear your presentation today. It was really well done, and I'm not surprised, having worked with you over the years. That was a really well done, very forward thinking, and I'm very pleased. I just want to shift gears a little bit for just a couple of quick ones. Who's the best contact person up there to talk to? There are several small businesses talking about wanting to know if there's rental assistance for their commercial stores. Is that still available through the city? Who do they contact to find out more info?
So I'll just say, if a business did not get rental assistance in phase 3, they're still eligible, so they can reach out. Tom Galligani is the best person to start with, and he'll point you to the person on his staff who actually is doing the paperwork for them. But even if they did get assistance in phase 3, if there's need, they should reach out, because we're in the process of developing phase 4 and determining, what eligibility would be there. And there's a possibility there'll be eligibility for another round for folks who still need assistance, who, even if they got assistance in phase 3. We're still sorting the details of phase 4 out. And what really kind of what the impacts are and how to define them best to make sure that money gets to businesses that need assistance. But really, I'd say as a general rule, any small Somerville-based business that has had their share of challenges, or even just want to check in and share where they are with our economic development team, reaching out to Tom, Tom will get back to you, or someone on his team will get back to you pretty quickly to talk about what we can do to help. And I do think phase 4 will be a huge step as well. And as I said, it will also include the support for being able to create more accessible outdoor seating for the small restaurants.
All right, and just a couple of quick ones here regarding Davis Square. I understand there's a citywide parking study going on that's supposed to be done late spring by summertime.
Yeah, I haven't been in it day to day, but my mobility team has, but yes, there is.
And secondly, the Davis Square infrastructure, sidewalks, crosswalks, absolutely in deteriorating condition. Is there a priority there? Union Square and Assembly have been absolutely wonderful jobs down there, but Davis is basically deteriorating as we speak. What's the likely source of attention it's going to receive? It seems to have been ignored over the last couple of years, despite a lot of us trying to make inroads into making those infrastructure problems aware to a number of city people. Any updates from your point of view?
So yeah, I don't have a lot of update except to say I'm in the 22nd day of a mayor's administration, and it's on the list of things I need to talk to her about to see where we're going from there. It hasn't come up yet, but then again, so have about 300 other things not come up yet. Just to share one of the challenges we face, Assembly is obviously new construction, roads being done by developer and developer assisted projects. Union Square has its own diff that is helping to pay for Union Square streetscape improvements. Davis, we should be 100% committed to. There is obviously things there that need to be done, and there's been a lot of conversation about what to do on the short term versus what to do in the long run. There is money coming forward to do improvements to Holland and College Ave, but that doesn't really settle some of the core challenges of the crumbling crosswalks and the falling bricks, falling out bricks in places like Elm Street. Talked a lot about accessibility. I want to create the most accessible parklets for people who are doing outdoor dining, but I also have to make sure the sidewalk in front of them is accessible as well. And there are challenges in Davis Square, certainly, that need to be addressed. So it's high on my to-do list to figure out what's going on there. The strategy is bringing the mobility and the infrastructure team together to understand what in the short term needs to happen in order to address the issues in Davis Square. And I haven't yet had a chance we haven't had the big capital projects conversation with the mayor yet to figure out what we do next. But I'm hoping that in the very near future, I have a more straightforward and detailed answer to that. It's something that needs to be dealt with. I will say this one just sort of side comment on Davis in particular is there will need to be a discussion about the long-term future of brick sidewalks in the very near future. Some very thoughtful folks from Davis now came and met with us and the former mayor talking about brick sidewalks and ways to make them work in an accessible manner. I've heard other thoughts on that topic from folks in the disability community. This conversation needs to be elevated to bring more community conversation and understanding into it, to understand where we're going to end up on that front. Maybe in the short run, we can fix a crosswalk or address some particular issues before we address that issue. But it's really important to understand where we're going to be on that issue in the near future. I appreciate that the Davis Now folks have offered to go talk to the disabilities community, maybe the Disabilities Commission, the Commission for People with Disabilities. So we can have opportunities to make sure that those conversations happen in the very near future. But I'll check in. I'll make sure to thank you, Jack, for bringing it up, and I'll make sure to put it high on my list of things to bring up with the mayor in the next week so that we can figure out where we're going from there.
Great, George. Thank you very much. Davis Now and a lot of us will be very happy to be involved. Thank you.
Sure. Adam, I see you got your hand up too.
Yeah. Thank you, George, for coming. Always great to see the amazing amount of work that's going on in Somerville all at once. Just a quick question, density. I know that some people have been talking about over the years of how we can reduce it. Now we're looking to increase density along the rail. I was wondering with that, how you're working with different groups and how to increase density and how that works with the zoning process that had just been put in and what you're seeing in the next year or two as these stations come online, what metrics, what levers we can use to increase the density, especially along the rail.
So I'll step back to Summer Vision, to the earlier version of Summer Vision, which I lean on a lot when thinking about density in the community, which is that conserve, enhance, transform strategy. The transform has been pretty obvious, that the idea that the 360 acres on the eastern side of the city that were formerly industrial could be substantially transformed with new housing and new jobs and new opportunities. The Boynton Yards, Innerbelt, Brick Bottoms of the world. And there are a lot of work to get done because we've got to deal with infrastructure investment, and we've got to deal with conversations about how to make sure to get community benefits out of it and publicly accessible open space. But at the end of the day, I think what you see there is you see a lot of confident commitment to wanting to do something. And long run, I think it's been relatively easy. It's tough to use that word with all of the covenants and stuff we do, but it has been a straightforward step at the end of the day to be able to build pretty substantial stuff in a place like Assembly Square. On the flip side, you have the conserved districts. You have our neighborhoods of 2 and 3 family houses. And, there's a lot of conversation about where and how those can potentially evolve. A lot of the focus has been on accessory additional dwelling units, or, can we add a 3rd unit here? Can we make some shifts for affordable housing? And those have been healthy conversations, but I don't think you see substantial change in those places. What's always been most interesting to me is the enhanced, the area that's in between. That's an area where you can provide more intensity of development and more activity around a rail line. If you do it well and you design it well and you think it through, and those districts in the zoning come out as the mixed use, the MR districts or the urban residence district. And that's where you're talking about occasionally, replacing a gas station with a 4, 5, or 6 story building. I do think the zoning positions us well for the ability to do that in the areas that we zoned to do that. And it will be interesting to see and watch how that goes forward over the course of the coming years, sort of what development proposals we get, what zoning adjustments we might need to make to address them. I think a lot of you on the call have heard me say before that the 2019 zoning overhaul wasn't the end of a process. It created an operating system for zoning that we can build upon and change and adjust. And I hope that we can make those adjustments as we learn more. But I think, Adam, in general, to answer your question, I do think the zoning well positions us to be able to add density in the places and under the circumstances where the community wanted us to be when we did all the community conversation around Summer Vision and around zoning. So I hope that continues to work and continue to get there. I think one of the things that has been a little interesting is the shift between residential and commercial growth seems to go with the market. That really pulls us a lot one way or the other. But we try to hang on through that the best we can and work to get a good balance out of all of it.
Thank you.
Stephen, it is just about 1 o'clock. I don't know if anybody else has any particular questions, but I'm happy to do one more if you'd like.
If there's one more, we'll go with that. If not, we'll give it a second. I don't see anybody else. George, I want to thank you very much for taking the time once again to meet with us. We look forward to doing it later in the year, and also to meet with some of the various people in your staff, and of course work together on a daily basis. So I want to thank you very much for joining us, and thank our audience as well. We'll be announcing soon the next Catch22 luncheon series, and we will have this videotape probably at the beginning of the week, next week, online for your access. All right?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.